They say debt is dangerous, and for most people it is. But what if I told you that the rich, the ultra-wealthy, don't just use debt, they embrace it, and not just the so-called good debt tied to appreciating assets. No, they even use what you probably call bad debt, and they turn it into a weapon to build wealth faster than you ever thought possible. Let's dive into the financial tactics the 1% don't want you to understand. And by the end of this, you'll start seeing debt not as a trap, but as a tool, a very powerful tool. Understanding the myth of bad debt and how the wealthy twist it. We've all been taught that bad debt is something to fear. Credit cards, personal loans, high-interest debt, the kind of stuff that buries you if you're not careful. And for most people, it is. But for the rich, they've figured out a way to flip the script. They know that the danger in debt lies not in the debt itself, but in how it's used. A credit card, for example, can either destroy your financial life or become a lever to generate even more money. It depends entirely on the person holding it. The wealthy don't fear high-interest debt because they don't let interest work against them for long. Instead, they use these forms of debt to fund moves that generate even higher returns, like flipping a high-demand asset or temporarily funding a business opportunity they know will repay itself quickly. They've trained themselves to see opportunity and risk, while most of the population runs from it. The rich don't use their own money. You've probably heard the term OPM, other people's money. But what you may not realize is just how deep this rabbit hole goes. The rich rarely use their own cash. Why would they, when banks are eager to lend them cheap capital? They use bad debt, even high-interest revolving credit lines, not because they have no choice, but because they understand the velocity of money. Let's say a wealthy investor gets access to a $100,000 credit line at a high 18% APR. Most people would panic, but they use that money to buy inventory, flip a distressed property, or even invest in digital assets during a dip, earning 25%, 40%, even 60% returns. The debt gets paid off quickly, the profits are pocketed, and the original capital never left their hands. It's about leverage, not avoidance. They know that control over capital matters more than ownership. And by keeping their own funds liquid, they're always ready for the next opportunity. The power of arbitrage, turning bad debt into cash flow. Let's talk about one of the oldest tricks in the book, arbitrage. It's what hedge funds do, it's what private equity firms live on, and it's how the rich use even bad debt to create real, tangible cash flow. Imagine borrowing at a 20% interest rate. Sounds insane, right? But what if you're investing in a short-term project returning 40% in just a few months? Or a high-ticket drop shipping operation during holiday season rush? That 20% is suddenly just a cost of doing business. This is how the wealthy think. Every debt carries a cost, but what matters is what you earn with it. They're constantly seeking spreads, the difference between borrowing cost and return. If the spread is big enough, even high-interest debt becomes profitable. This is why they don't panic over bad debt. They see the margins, not just the numbers. They're not emotional. They're strategic. And while others are avoiding debt out of fear, they're calculating how to turn it into gold. Quick question before we go further. Have you ever looked at a credit card or loan and thought, what if I use this to my advantage? Stay with me, because what comes next might change how you see money forever. Strategic default. When the rich just walk away. Here's something you don't hear about on financial TikTok. The rich sometimes walk away from bad debt on purpose. It's called strategic default. While you might lose sleep over missing a car payment, the wealthy treat some debts like business bets. If an investment doesn't pan out, they assess the legal consequences, protect their personal assets using LLCs or trusts, and sometimes just walk away. It's cold, it's calculated, but it's legal, and it's part of the game. Bad debt to them is just a business expense gone wrong, and they're insulated by layers of protection. You won't hear this from mainstream finance gurus because it sounds reckless, but it's how corporate America operates. The system is built around risk-taking, not playing it safe. And when the risk doesn't pay off, they limit the damage and move on. Imagine what that level of financial detachment could do for your decision-making. Credit lines as growth fuel, not emergencies. Most people think of credit lines as lifelines, something to tap into when you're broke or desperate. But the rich, they see credit as growth fuel. Business owners in particular use bad debt, like unsecured, personal loans, or even business credit cards to fund expansions, hire talent, or purchase systems that increase output. The interest rate doesn't matter as long as the return is greater. For example, spending $50,000 on a team or sales funnel that generates $150,000 in new business makes that 20% APR look like a bargain. This is how the game is played. The poor and middle class borrow to survive. The wealthy borrow to scale. They don't fear monthly payments. They anticipate them and build them into their ROI forecasts. And because they treat credit like rocket fuel, they reach levels of growth that cash-only operators simply can't match. Buying time with bad debt. Ever heard the saying, time is money? The wealthy take that literally. One of the most underrated uses of bad debt is buying time. That might mean using a credit card to hire a VA, outsource tasks, or delay bills while cash flow stabilizes. If using debt gives them time to focus on high-leverage activities, like negotiating deals, launching a course, or closing a client, it's worth every penny. They don't look at interest as a penalty. They see it as a payment for freedom. In this way, bad debt becomes a time machine. It allows them to multiply their hours by offloading low-value work and concentrating on high-yield decisions. It's an edge most people ignore because they're stuck in a scarcity mindset. But those who truly understand wealth building know buying time with borrowed money is a cheat code when used right. If this is changing the way you think about debt, let me know in the comments, because most people have never been taught to think like this. It's time to unlearn what the system drilled into us. Ready for more? Let's go deeper. Tax advantages. Yes, even with bad debt. Here's a kicker. Sometimes the interest from bad debt can be written off. That's right. Business owners can deduct interest on business credit cards, lines of credit, and even certain personal loans used for business activities. The rich know this and structure their expenses accordingly. They shift purchases to business accounts, even if the interest is high, because a portion of that is coming back through tax deductions. Plus, the return on their investments often dwarfs the cost of that debt. This is why tax strategy and debt strategy go hand in hand. The rich have teams of advisors who align every dollar of borrowed money with maximum tax efficiency. You don't need to be a millionaire to start doing this. Just track your expenses and ask your accountant what can be written off. Bad debt becomes less bad when Uncle Sam is helping to pay for it. Emotional detachment, the key to using bad debt wisely. Here's the truth no one likes to hear. Most people fail with debt because they're emotional. They panic, they stress. They treat every dollar borrowed like it's dragging them toward ruin. But the rich, they're detached. They see debt like a mechanic sees tools. Not good, not bad, just useful or not, depending on the job. This mindset is critical. If you can remove emotion from your financial decisions, you'll start to think in terms of outcomes and strategy, not fear and guilt. You'll stop associating debt with shame and start treating it as a business lever. This doesn't mean you take on debt recklessly. It means you use it like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Precision, intention, focus. Once you adopt this lens, you'll be shocked at how many doors open. How to start thinking like the rich, even if you're not one yet. So how do you actually apply this if you're not rich yet? Start small. Look at the debt you already have and ask, is there a smarter way to use it? Can you consolidate it into a lower payment and reinvest the savings? Could you use a portion to fund a side hustle, build a product, or learn a skill that increases your income? Start seeing debt as a potential stepping stone, not a trap. Read about how businesses use debt. Study how investors think. Get comfortable with the math, not just the feelings. The rich play the game because they understand the game. They don't rely on luck, they lean on knowledge. You don't need millions to start, just a mindset shift. Because once you begin to see bad debt through a strategic lens, the road to wealth looks a lot more achievable. If this episode sparks something in you, if you're seeing debt in a whole new light, share this with someone who's stuck in fear mode. Because knowledge like this, it's not just power, it's profit. Let me know in the comments, are you using debt to grow, or is it using you?